that common misconception of, well, if it's on the shelf, then it must be safe enough. It's just not true, unfortunately. The company who's making a toxic product, it's not their fault that we're buying this off the shelf and putting on aluminum deodorant. We need to have the mindset of taking responsibility for our own health.
Emilie, welcome to the Meat Mafia podcast. This has been a long time in the making. We've missed you a few times at the Force of Nature conference, but excited to have you on the show.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, Harry and I were particularly excited for this conversation. We're just we love talking to founders that are really trying to pioneer the health and wellness space. And what you're doing at Toups Co is incredible. I think we probably found out about you around 2 years ago and have just seen the explosive growth of your brand. And I feel like what you're doing at Toups Co is you're really pioneering this non-toxic lifestyle. And I think the other really cool thing about your brand is you have this amazing founder story where you kind of it's amazing how you can take a problem and then it ends up being like the ultimate blessing when you look back. So I would love to just kick things off just to learning a little bit more about you and your backstory and kind of just the origins and the roots of Toups Co. That would be amazing.
Well, thanks. And, our story it was the catalyst to our business for sure. When you have like a pain point, I was dealing with thyroid issues. My daughter had eczema, and my husband and I were living a very standard American life. We didn't question, our food, and we just kind of, my mom was a little healthier. We thought we ate healthier. We actually truly believe that. And so we look back and it's laughable, it's kind of funny now, but so many people don't really know the basics. And I can resonate with that because I absolutely had no idea. And so I was taking some thyroid medication, was tired, had 2 children. My oldest had really severe eczema, and my husband was working really long hours. We, kind of lived between not eating that great and having, just a lot of stress. And we both sat down one night and watched this food documentary on Netflix. We were just, we had some time and we decided to watch it. We definitely started kind of already looking into some natural stuff, but didn't know a whole lot. And we took and I say this on all the podcasts, but it's so true. We took a black garbage bag and really threw away everything in our pantry and our fridge. And we're, kind of cold turkey. We're like, we're going to make a change. Like from today on, we're never looking back. And so I, started to wean off of the thyroid medication that I was taking. We were feeling a little bit better, but around, I guess, 2013-ish, the market law, there was no more Armour thyroid to be purchased. And it was like it's a pig hormone, and they're using it in the place of like a synthetic or synthroid for thyroid medication. And I couldn't get it anymore. And so a lot of patients were going on to synthroid, and I knew I didn't want the synthetic. So I was just like, I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm done. I took the last one, and he's like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know. I guess we're going to see. But at the same time, we were making a lot of dietary changes, and we had purchased this farm. We had bought this milk cow, and I had introduced raw dairy, and we were eating, just the basics. We didn't know all the words. We didn't know what paleo or keto or carnivore. We didn't know anything. We just knew that anything packaged, we weren't purchasing. So we were just buying vegetables, fruit, and meat. And that was it. And I saw so much change in my health that I've never taken thyroid medication again. And that's not to say
Wow.
that I felt better immediately. It was definitely, a work in progress, but so many facets went into that. And it wasn't just one thing. It was living on this farm and being in the sunlight and being exposed to the elements and being outside, which was different than living in a subdivision and being inside all the time. Change in diet and change in stress, being outside and believing that I could heal was just all of those facets together was, just such a big player in my healing. My husband also suffered with debilitating migraines, and he just saw so much improvement. And, he's an Army veteran, and he was exposed to a lot of like chemicals during that time that he was in the military, a lot of vaccinations that normal civilians don't get. And then, some things over in Iraq, I can't remember the chemicals, but different neurological things. And I know that that all contributed to these just debilitating migraines. And so that his health was just a huge part of both of us saying, like, we're tired of it. We're moving on to something new. We're definitely going to make a change. And, you know, our lives have just never gone, they've changed and never gone back. And it's been such an incredible blessing to just stumble upon the information,
Mm.
because honestly, we didn't seek out one special source. We just figured we'd get back to the basics and learn as we go, and that's kind of what we did.
Mm. Emily, I think so many people struggle to make the decision to make a change, and I would love to hear more just about kind of like the emotional aspect of making that decision and that commitment, because it sounds like you guys were just all in, and I think a lot of times that's what it takes. But I'd love to hear from your perspective how it was helpful to have your husband on board and just that commitment that you guys made, because clearly it's something that's changed your guys' lives.
I mean, I could not have done it if we weren't in agreement. And definitely, like, if he was bringing junk into the house and I'm trying to eat healthy, I mean, that is incredibly difficult. I can't imagine having to try to work on my health while I had a partner who was bringing in what I wasn't eating. So, we just made the decision together that, like, this is what we want to do. Seemed kind of crazy at the time. And because we didn't have a whole lot of guidance and we didn't know, we did all the things. As we learned, we just continued to grow. So we did juicing, and then we changed to, paleo. And then my husband really thrives on a more like ketogenic diet.
Mm.
And so he's doing that and he's thriving. But we just adapted as we were more in tune to our bodies. And I think that it takes time to be in tune to what your body wants or needs when you it was never a second thought to you before. And I believe that it takes years to get to the point where you can just tell what your body's needing, craving. We went on a supplement a year or two where we were like doing all these supplements and taking all these things. And then we were like, okay, maybe we can do it more food-based, and then just real finding a balance between all the noise in the natural health space is just a learning so it's a learning, journey for each person, and each person's going to be completely different. And so, I tell our story, but I like everyone to know that your story is your own, and everyone is
Mhm.
going to kind of find what works for them. He can eat way less carb than I can. And, I'm still nursing a baby and I'm eating sweet potatoes and regular white potatoes and things that he won't touch. But we just kind of find a balance in what feels best for us. But definitely the decision for us to do it together, I think, was just really key in our success.
Mm. Yeah, it's an amazing story, Em. And I feel like it sounds like you both kind of almost fell in love with that healing process where you realize, like, look, everyone has a different timeline. I don't know how long this is going to take, but I'm just going to continue to iterate, make improvements, tinker with these different macronutrients, and just trust that, like, over time, God has really provided me with this like amazing vehicle to heal myself. And there's kind of two main things I take from your story. Number one, I love the commitment of you and your husband just getting those trash bags out and just throwing all the processed crap in there, because it's so interesting how when people make changes, there's this like reluctance to throw out these ultra processed foods. And I'm thinking to myself, are you really going to let a $3 box of seed oil laced Cheetos hold
Absolutely.
you back from achieving your goals? So like that line in the sand is number one. And then number two, that trust that you had to go off that thyroid medication, which is really contrary to what your doctors were telling you. Harry and I have talked a lot about this. When I was healing from ulcerative colitis, I made the decision to tell my doctor, I'm getting off these drugs, I'm getting off this medication because I'm healing on my own. And I don't think I need these things. And my doctor was nervous about it, but I just pushed the issue. And now I'm in the best health of my life. But if I had listened to Western medicine, I would still be on those super expensive drugs. And I'm sure that you resonate with that as well. And look at where your health is now.
For sure. And it can seem really scary to think that you know better than what your doctor's saying. And they're like, well, let's move you on to Synthroid. We'll start with a low dose. And at that point, we were already experiencing some, better health and even mental health, emotional health. Like, it
Mm.
all was it's all tied together so closely that I don't think 6 months, a year before that, I maybe would have had the courage or the tenacity to be like, no, I'm not going to take them anymore. But I had gotten to that place in my life. I was like, I don't need that. And, whatever happens, happens. I'll deal with it when it comes. And obviously I never needed to go back on them. So
That's
Have,
amazing.
I was,
Go ahead, Harry.
have you seen any of your friends take notice of the actions that you guys took and the success that you guys had and kind of follow suit?
yeah, I am the oldest of 9 kids. And so I have 5 sisters. I'm very, very close with them. And we all lived that standard American lifestyle. And so, Trent and I, we had moved away from Louisiana. That's where I'm from. And so we were kind of doing this not super close with them. We had just kind of moved, and I don't know, new location and new lifestyle all in one is kind of what we did. And as we saw so, just amazing changes, we would talk about it, and I never was really pushy about it with anyone else, but they'd be like, oh, Emilie and Trent, they're crazy. They don't, they don't eat this anymore. They and I would just bring my own food if I needed. I never imposed it on anybody else or expected anyone to change anything about themselves. If I knew that I wasn't going to be able to eat something somewhere, I just brought my own and just not made a big deal about it at all. But those changes have made such a ripple effect through my family. And I'm so thankful, one, that the Lord brought us on this path, but two, that I've seen my entire family change their lives and slowly come on this path as well. And so, my sisters, my sisters that have kids are easily 7, 8, 10, 11 years younger than me. And they're, breastfeeding their babies. They're having home births. They're eating very clean. And we all are, just a little bit different in what our health philosophies are. But they, just by watching and talking and just experimenting and listening to the journey of us raising our children this way, that was just enough. When I never had to convince them, they just saw it and then began to think of it as normal. And then when they had their families, they are raising them in the same principles, which is like, I could almost cry happy tears to see them raising their kids, and they're so vibrant and so healthy. And to know that if we wouldn't have made this change, would they be the same? Maybe, maybe not. But it feels, satisfying to become a part of that.
Yeah, Em, I think you touch on a really important point about health in general, because we have gotten asked before, you know, like the people that don't fully understand what we're talking about, they'll be like, you seem so neurotic. Why do you not eat these foods? Why do you just focus on these foods? And what we talk about is, look, both Harry and myself, we wouldn't be the men that we are right now if we didn't make these very specific changes. You talked about the improvements in your mood and anxiety, and I sometimes I walk the inner aisle of the grocery store and I think about this quote that our buddy Safe Dean said, where he said how much anxiety and depression is mischaracterized as a sugar addiction. And so I think about you with the amazing business you've built, being a great wife, having 4 kids. You getting your health in order has allowed all these amazing ripple effects like you're talking about. And now it's not just
Absolutely.
spreading to your children and your husband, it's spreading to your friends, your customers. Like, getting your metabolic health and like laying this amazing foundation, I think it gives you this capacity to achieve so much more. And you're like the perfect example of that, of what you're doing at Toups Co as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And definitely, like, just the things that come with being unhealthy, the tiredness, the brain fog, and so much, like, just emotional, mental, not having the drive or the tenacity to do things, like all of that. And health is so multifaceted that when people think of symptoms, they don't always think of emotional or mental symptoms as part of, how they're feeling. They only want to think about the physical symptoms, but it's so all integrated. And, I just think that you can have such a clear vision and be such a better version of yourself when your metabolic health is in check.
One of the things that Brett and I talk a bunch about is just the power of community in general and like the osmosis that happens when you have, like, it sounds like you and your husband were kind of the catalyst for seeing change happen in your family, but just having other people around you who are at least trying to make those incremental changes at the same time, it can be such a powerful experience. And one of the biggest benefits of that is like then your life, as people start to make progress in the same direction, becomes so effortless. Like you see the people around you becoming healthier, living more vibrant lives, and it's truly this gateway to seeing not only your own health improve, but everyone who's very close in proximity to you. So it's just such a powerful testimony of what happens when one person makes a powerful decision and it has that ripple effect.
Yeah, for sure.
I would love to get your perspective on how it's been owning a dairy cow. And part of the reason why I'm asking you that is we have a couple really good friends, the Ann and Weldon Warren. They run a regenerative ranch in Lubbock, Texas called Holy Cow Beef. And they've been trying to convince Harry and I to start off by getting a dairy cow. And he had a bunch of amazing reasons why he recommended that. I mean, number one, Harry probably drinks a gallon of raw milk a day, so it would pay for itself pretty quickly.
For sure.
But I'm just curious, how did you go about doing that? How has that process been? Because I think a lot of people that are getting into this non-toxic space, there's this concept of maybe homesteading a little bit or just starting to actually own that part of the supply chain when it comes to their food. That's really exciting for a lot of people. And I think that's such an interesting thing that you kind of started with the dairy cow while you were getting all these other things in order in context to your health.
So, actually, before I started Toups Co, I was a homestead blogger, and my homestead blog
Love
does
that.
not exist. It doesn't exist on the internet anymore, so don't go look it up. Uh, but I had really plugged myself into the homestead community because I wanted to know everything that there was about growing your own food and raising your own animals and all the things. And um, it's a funny story, and I always tell it is that before we closed on our house, before we signed those papers, I had a deposit down on a dairy cow because I knew that we had the place and the land for it. And my husband thinks, that is a funny story. And at the time he was like, "You did what? You already put a deposit on a dairy cow?" And I was like, "Yes." I was like, "We're going to close in a month, and I can't." And the second we close, we're going to pick her up. And it's such an amazing part of and you'll hear homestead bloggers say that their dairy cow is the matriarch of their farm, and it is because they're so integral to the other parts of the farm. And there's so many ways to use the milk, and the rhythm of getting up really early in the morning and going down to the barn and resting your head on your cow and milking the cow is just, it's almost like my church in the morning. You can go and just be away from all the noise and out in nature. And my husband and I, we both milk, and he's probably doing, not probably, he's doing most of the milking now. But in the beginning, it was just me, and he worked out of town. And it was I really truly believe is part of my healing is going out to the barn every day and taking care of this animal and learning everything that there is about animal husbandry. Because to do it right, you have to, know all the parts. But she was providing organic raw milk for me, for my children, skim milk for our pigs and our chickens. And I'm culturing the milk to be acidic and pouring it on our blueberries. And they were just like so many. The cow gives so much to the farm. And I mean, I've owned cows now for 10 years, and every time I get really stressed or we're in a season of life that seems really busy, we're like, well, maybe we should just buy our raw milk. We can just, get rid of our dairy cow. And now our kids are like, "No, mom, no, we'll milk the cow." And so I have a almost 13 and 11-year-old now, and they're almost to the point where they can do it. But it's just been a really awesome journey of ours to just buy the dairy cow and do the thing. And I think people's biggest hesitation is like, "Oh, I can't do this, and I can't travel, and I can't, I've got to be there every day for this cow." And we just kind of make the cow work into our lives. And whether that's leaving, we do calf sharing, which is leaving the calf on. And so now our calf is big enough where he could drink all the milk. And if we didn't want to milk, we just wouldn't separate them at night and leave them together in the next day. Or the dry period, we just plan it out to be in the busiest travel season for us. And so the cow's dry, and it's easy to get someone just to go and take care of the farm, feed them, and not have to milk. And so it's just, we've made it work into our lives over the last 10 years. So now it just feels like part of living is like we have cows and we have to take care of them. We know what we have to do. And any decisions that we make, we just kind of work it around our schedule of having to maintain the farm at the same time.
Mm. Could you imagine raising your kids without having the animals around and the lessons that come from having that close connection with nature?
Absolutely not. It's so important. It's so important. And it's important to them now. They are strictly in charge of feeding all of the animals and cleaning their water troughs and providing them with fresh water. And so my husband and I now we can just kind of walk out and make sure that it's being done. But it is 100% their responsibility. They pick eggs, they feed, they do water, and it gives them such a purpose. And our kids are homeschooled, so they're home all day and they can do it. But giving them that purpose and giving them something that's they're in charge of gives them a lot of confidence. And I honestly believe that it just makes them have more joy. They're happier, they're more well-rounded, and they feel like they're contributing to the family, which also, it really does bring kids joy to feel like they are part of what makes our family go round.
Yeah, I can only imagine how many valuable learnings come from that too, right? You talk about you and Trent watching that documentary on Netflix, and I think about, Harry and myself having our own awakening about 5 years ago. And you imagine how much better you would be at this point if you knew a lot of these principles about food. And I mean, that is the ultimate form of sovereignty, of being able to actually get your own raw milk, be able to like harvest these chickens and get the eggs and teach your kids those principles, being able to really like embed those really important principles into their mind at such a young age. I always just get excited thinking about what that generation is going to be like when they get older,
Right.
having these principles. And sometimes we'll go to these really interesting conferences all around this like food sovereignty concept. And a lot of parents will bring their young children. And Harry and I are always amazed at just how well behaved and well spoken these kids are at a really young age. And then I'll go back to the Northeast where I'm from, where a lot of kids that, aren't homeschooled eating processed foods, like it seems like there's a night and day difference between that.
Yeah, and it teaches kids a lot of empathy as well, because they have a lot of empathy for the animals. And what I've witnessed as my kids are getting older is to see them have empathy for other children. And I think that is just missing in our culture, is having empathy. And it comes with being solely responsible for something and its health and its well-being all day, every day. And, I'll see other kids that are maybe having a hard time or having a disagreement with one of my kids. And it amazes me every time and I'm not saying that they're perfect. My own kids get into disagreements with each other, but to see them see another kid and he's like, well, it's so hard. They have to go to school all day and they wake up really early and they have to eat the junk food that they have there at school. And I'm like, that's right, actually. So yeah, let's give them a little grace and let's be kind of empathetic towards their position, because they're able to see and recognize it on their own. And really, if I don't do anything, if I never had Toups, or if I didn't make any other, impressions on the world, and just raise my kids to be able to see that in other people, have empathy for people and animals, and, just have some grit, and love the Lord, and that's it. Then my mission in life, if I don't do anything else, that is the most important thing, because I think children are the most important work. And I do enjoy my work at Toups, but they're my most important work for sure.
Mm. As a mother, I'm sure it's also so rewarding, just seeing those incremental steps of them understanding different aspects of the farm, which is just like a reflection of life itself. It's so cool. Like Brett was saying, 5 years ago, we had our own like nutritional transformations and journeys, but we've also gotten really close with a lot of people who have really been intentional about the way that they raise their kids. And, a lot of them are actually faith-based. And I don't think that that is by coincidence. I think that their faith has led them to want to really impart wisdom that these kids can carry with them for their entire life. And I'm curious, just on your perspective of what drove you to make that decision about homeschooling. Like it's in our corner of the internet, and the people we talk to on a regular basis, it isn't necessarily seen as something that's outside of the norm, but for most people it is. So I'm curious, like, what drove you guys to make that decision?
So actually, our kids went to conventional school. So our oldest went to regular school until second grade or third grade. And then my second, Micah, finished kindergarten in regular school. And we were, working on Toups at the time. We're living on the farm, and it just no longer aligned with our goals for our family.
Mm.
And we went at like Christmas time, and it was halfway through the school year, and my husband went in and he just like yanked everybody out, signed all the paperwork, and we were like, we're not coming back. And when they asked us why, we were just like, we just have a different vision for our family. Nothing you did, nothing it just didn't fit anymore what our ethos was for our family. And we wanted to instill in our kids more than just academics. And you can't do that when they're at school all day. They wake up so early and they get home late, and then they have homework, and there's just not enough time to be with their parents and be learning other things, like, if my husband's out there working on the tractor and pulling fence wire out of the bush hog, and our sons are right there with them, they don't have to learn how to do that when they're adults. They will already know. And in addition, academics are important, but they are able to do them in such a shorter amount of time, and then just follow us. We take them everywhere. If I'm there, most likely my kids are there too. And so they're able to learn to converse with adults. They don't have a fear of speaking with people that are different ages than them. They're not confined to just their own age in the classroom all day. And I've really seen just them flourish. And my oldest was, I can remember driving her to school, and it's spelling test on Friday, and it would be like Wednesday and Thursday, and we're going over spelling tests on the way, our spelling words on the way. And she's having all this anxiety. I don't know my spelling words. And then Friday, she's like, spelling test is today, and I still don't know. And just seeing that anxiety and that pressure on a third grader who should be outside like painting butterflies and doing spelling, it should be just way less important to her at that age. And that was one of the reasons that we pulled them out, is just this intense stressful environment to perform. And now they're just doing so great without that pressure. And so we don't do grades, we teach to mastery. So if we're learning a new concept and it's something difficult, like fractions and decimals, and we're multiplying and dividing them, which I had to reteach myself how to do that, then we just continue to do it till you master it. And I'm like, hey, you don't get it? No big deal. We'll do it again tomorrow. If it takes weeks, then it takes weeks. If your sister is getting it and you're not, then we'll just continue to learn it until we master it. And it just takes the pressure off of having to learn it like really quickly or within a certain amount of time, or telling the child that, oh, F, D, I'm a failure, I'm not learning it, because everybody learns at different rates. And so what I think is the most cool about homeschool is that my 11-year-old can be he's like in 7th, 8th grade math, and he might be on a 5th grade reading level. So we're going to continue to go in math because he's excelling, and we're going to keep going through the books until he's done. And so you can take one subject and excel in something they're great at and continue to go way ahead grade level, and then might be a little behind in a different, and I don't like to use the word behind, but in a different grade level for another subject. And that's okay too. And they learn so quickly when they're older. So if they don't master something at 7 and we reintroduce it at 9, instead of it taking months and months of trying to learn it at 9, their brains have developed to the point where they're like, oh, I got that, no problem, moved on to the next thing. It took me a long time to understand that that's okay. And I kind of went into homeschooling thinking we would do school at home. But homeschool is a completely different concept than conventional school. And it takes unprogramming ourselves from what society says is school to understand that homeschooling is different, and it's just going to be different, and allowing them to learn in the way that they do. They just excel, and you see them, their personalities and their academics and just their maturity change because they don't have those societal pressures anymore.
That's so well said. And it sounds like you're saying it's almost like you're teaching your children the pursuit of mastery, but in a way where it should actually be fun and enjoyable. Because if they're
Right.
not feeling that pressure and they're feeling fun and they're seeing themselves improving, they're not you naturally want to go all in on that thing that you think you're good at. And you even think about your daughter getting stressed out about this spelling test. I remember getting stressed out about similar things. And as a founder, I'm like, okay, if I can't spell a word, I literally have autocorrect on Gmail. Like, why am I getting, like, why are we putting pressure on kids about these things that don't really matter?
Yeah, to the point that they're crying. It's just absurd.
Yeah. And it's motivating to think about this next generation, like your children, like just the paths that they'll end up choosing. And I know everyone is, a lot of people are doom and gloom about modern society. And I think where Harry and I fall on is that it's the best period ever to be an entrepreneur. We both met playing college baseball at Babson College, which is an entrepreneurial school up in Boston. And 99% of our classmates, even though they had an entrepreneurial degree, just work these corporate jobs, where through the internet we've connected with so many young people that just started really young. Maybe they didn't go to college, maybe they dropped out of college, and now they have multi-million-dollar e-commerce businesses because they taught themselves this amazing skill set. And I even think about what we're doing now, like everything that we've learned, I could never learn that by getting an MBA or reading something out of a business book. So I just think it's going to be really cool to see how your kids turn out, especially because your oldest two are at the age where they're going to remember mom, like putting in those hours, launching Toups Co,
Yeah.
formulating products, shipping out boxes. That's something I think a lot about with my dad. Is like, I have memories of him waking up really early to go into work and just kind of leading by that example. And I'm sure your kids see all that with you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. We definitely involve them in all facets. Everything we do as a family. And sometimes that means it takes longer. But when you think, and it's not always easy. And so I don't want to make it sound like, oh, our kids do everything with us and they're so great and they're so well behaved. Sometimes it's a struggle and we have to choose the struggle and choose for it to take longer because we've involved them in our day to day. And that some days it's easier than others. And some days I'm like, oh, what am I doing?
Mhm.
But I'm definitely starting to see the fruits of that in our older children. It's like, okay, you know, the days are long, but the years are short. And for sure, I'm
Mhm.
seeing the fruit in them, and it makes it so worth it.
Mm. You have me thinking about just the industrial system in general and how it really does it applies to our schooling system. And one of the things that you were talking about was just these natural limitations that we set for kids at certain ages and the expectations that that puts on them. And I think as a society, we've done a pretty good job with this industrial system of making everything feel very mechanistic. And the, I guess, opposite of that, or kind of to the contrary of that, is this abundance that can happen when you are able to really let your children flow towards the things that they're naturally drawn towards. And I really just, the more conversations we have like this, I just grow inspired to see how people are living that abundant life and passing it down to their kids, like this ability for them to pour into subjects that they actually are really drawn to. I think like in a conventional schooling system, maybe they're not able to continue to reach their potential because they're kind of like capped out at what the expectations are for that grade. So
Mm.
it's really beautiful, just the idea that, you're teaching them mastery, and mastery is one of those things where once they learn competence in the actual ability to learn those skills, it's easily applicable to other things. So I just love, what you stand for with that in terms of just being able to teach that stuff to your kids. It's so great. It's just it's inspiring, honestly.
Thank you.
I'm
Yeah.
really curious. Oh, go ahead, Brett.
Oh, I was just going to say, to piggyback off of Harry's question, I was curious, and Harry, I know you've talked about this before. I think there's this misconception around entrepreneurs, like almost that building a family and building a business are mutually exclusive. So you kind of have to go all in your 20s before you meet
Yeah.
the right person and have a family. And I feel like people like you, people like Elisa Seelan from Fawn Bone Broth, you completely debunk those misconceptions. And I'm just curious, like, is work-life balance possible? Like, how do you balance being an incredible founder, great mom, great wife, everything else? How do you think about like bucketing your time and prioritizing the right things in your life?
Yeah, my husband and I have gone through seasons. And so we kind of reevaluate when a season isn't working. And, I met my husband when I was 19. We've been together since then, and we make 15 years this year. And I feel like it takes a while to figure out the groove that works for you. So when we first were married, he worked, I stayed home. As Toups grew and he came home, that's a whole nother dynamic. And then we're throwing more kids into the mix. And you just have to be real, like you just set the expectation for your day. Things are going to go awry and you just kind of have to pivot. And not getting annoyed with having to pivot and things changing is like the biggest thing. And I really struggled with that in the beginning. It's like I had a plan for my day. These things needed to happen for Toups, but I also have these 5 kids that need to be fed 3 times a day, and they also need to be educated. And so I would get annoyed when this pre-planned day didn't actually go the way that I had planned it out on paper. And just being able to like just drop all of your expectations and work when, like when am I most productive? Find that time and then work in that time. And so for me, it's not getting up at the crack of dawn and trying to get all these hours in before my kids, because then by the time they woke up, like I wasn't that joyful mom that's like waking up and making breakfast with them.
Mm,
And so, I've done all the times and tried working late at night and in the morning. And really what works best for us is the less stress that we have on our own bodies, the better we're going to feel and the better we'll be able to be for everyone else. So wake up when the sun comes up, and sun comes up, that's when we wake up naturally, not trying to stress our bodies out by getting up at 4 a.m. and trying to get all of these hours in. And then having, time outside, spending time with the Lord, making a good breakfast, spending time with my kids. And then it's like, okay, you do this, 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 and I have this to do. And then delegating and getting it done. Um, but you have to work together as a team. So Trent and I work well together. All of the kids are both of our kids. There's not my job, his job. If you see it needs to be done, we do it. And that takes some time to learn too, with, living with other people, because everyone has different expectations. But running Toups and raising our kids just all flows together like this. And every day is a little bit different. But you just have to prioritize what's important to you. And what's most important is that mentally you're ready to tackle the day and the kids. And my expectations of them aren't so high that when they make mistakes, I'm immediately irritated, because then it sends off, the rest of the day. And so my philosophy is that they are mine to teach. And every day when they make mistakes, my job is to instruct them on what's the right thing to do, instead of getting upset that I didn't get this deadline for Toups done because this kid is doing this.
mm,
But my job is to teach them. And so they're going to make mistakes. I'm expecting them to mess up because they're children, and I'm going to just instruct them on, keep steering them back on the right path
mm,
and trying to go the right way. And that just works so much better for us. And then with Toups, I've got such an amazing team. And so we hire for culture and not really for resume. And so if you're a great fit, I can teach you what I need you to do. And so hiring for culture with Toups means that, I'm able to work with these people and they are going to work with me the way I work. And so my sister is like my executive assistant, and we work whenever we can. And so if I'm like on the way to a dentist appointment, I'm calling her and telling her some things, and I'm like, hey, get with me this afternoon, 5 o'clock. And so then she will. And it's so wonderful to have people on your team that can also work the way that you work, which is,
mm,
a great cultural fit. And so I, both raising kids and running Toups is I hire at Toups for a great cultural fit if they're working directly with me. And then, raising our kids with expectations of them failing, and then just kind of mix it all together. And that's our day every day. If that makes sense. And it's a crazy, beautiful life. So
It's so cool. Um, Emily, could you provide a little context around you launching Toups? Like, where were you in life? What was the impetus for you actually taking that step to launch the brand that you have today?
So, you know, I actually started Toups without the intention of building it into this big business. I was making the tallow bombs for our daughter, and we're just seeing such incredible, you know, benefits. And so I was sharing it with friends and sharing it with family. My husband in our early years worked out of town a lot. And so he'd be gone sometimes a month or longer, or maybe just coming home on the weekends. And so I was home alone with two, maybe three kids at the time. And I was making tallow bombs in the kitchen, and I threw them up on Etsy without a lot of thought. And so it's been such a learning curve as we have grown, but that's just kind of how we started. And as I saw a need in our own life, you know, for deodorant, for the next thing, and some of the product that I needed that I wanted, or I was already going to be making for myself, I just would launch another product. And so we did a really big rebrand and moved from um, Etsy to our own website when I was like, you know what, people actually want the product and they actually really like it. Maybe I can make some side income. So it still was not like, I'm going to launch this brand and it's going to be our full-time income. I was like, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I was learning about like organic cotton and these extra things that were like a little pricier for the kids. And I was like, well, if I could just earn a little extra money, then I can buy like all, you know, linen organic cotton clothes for my kids. And so like that would be like the next goal. Or I wanted to invest in our health and wanted to buy like an Austin Air or something for our family that was for our health. And it was kind of pricey. And it's like, okay, well then I would set a goal of I'm going to make $1,000 and I'm going to buy this next thing for the kids. And so that is how Toups grew very slowly and incrementally in the beginning. And it was, I guess, around the time where I wasn't spending the income that was coming in, and we were like started to save money, that we were like, maybe we can do this for real. And so my next goal was replacing my husband's income. I was like, that's a really lofty goal. Do you think, you know, maybe that I can do that? And so that's when I started to say, okay, what products do I want and that are in line with my goals and my beliefs that other people are looking for too? And then I started making those products, and we had no marketing, zero. Like it was me on Instagram talking about the products. We had no paid marketing. I did all of our own graphics, I did it all. It was just me. And I kind of started to get a following and people were buying it. And then I couldn't meet the demand. And then that's when I realized, okay, it's time to shift a couple things and do this for real. My husband came in and we kind of made a plan, and it just took off from there. And so I really got serious and hired my first employee in 2018. I was pregnant for our fourth child and knew that I was going to need some help because I was pregnant and was struggling. And that employee still works for me today. She's the head of Toups Co's manufacturing and shipping. And it's just been amazing to watch it grow, and also
Mm.
just crazy at the same time, because it was never the intention is to just blow it out the water and be this big business, and Trent and I running it together, managing people and all these things. But it was just a great product combined with like just so much belief in what we were doing, combined with the Lord just guiding our steps. And then, you know, that's how Toups Co was born.
Mm. That's such an amazing organic founder story too. And it sounds like similar to what we were just talking about pressure with your daughter. It seems like you didn't really put pressure on yourself. It seems like you loved making the formulation for your children. You kind of identified those non-negotiables of like, hey, this is the best non-toxic skincare I can make. And then it was like you started small with $1,000, you know, supplementing your husband's income, and like you look at what it's grown now. And I think that's really important advice for founders, because it is so easy to set these almost like overly lofty goals that will take you years and years to achieve, which I don't think that's necessarily wrong, but I think it's so easy in the game that we're in now, where it's like you could just get funding for millions of dollars, start cranking paid advertisements, and it's just all about revenue, versus like really
Yes.
just building this organic brand where it's something that you'd love to do. Like you were doing it for free before you ever sold a product. And even just like the organic things of you as the founder being willing to pull out your phone and take a video of you talking to the product, like that stuff works. And it
It
creates
does.
stickier customers.
Yeah. For sure. And, I have a friend who owns another business and they're in the health and wellness space. And I love the product that they have. And it's just such a amazing business. And I was talking to her and there's like, they have 5 investors and they have these people to answer to. And I was just kind of, and they grew so much faster. So I used to be like, man, like if we could do that, or how come they've grown so much quicker than us? And like, what are kind of analyzing what we're doing versus what they're doing, and then really talking to founder about like the nitty gritty and realizing like I am so thankful we don't
Mm.
have 5 investors to answer to, and I still can be like, hey, next week we're going to have a sale, we need to bump up the numbers for the end of the month, and in 3 days we've got it all together and we can launch it out because we're still in control of the day to day. So thankful for that. And so I wouldn't wish more higher revenues and faster growth in exchange for giving away some of the data, having to answer to somebody for every decision that we make. So for sure, that is, it's just a huge blessing.
Mm.
Mm. Have your superpowers been revealed to you during this entrepreneurial pursuit?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, everyone has different strengths, and I'm actually working with um, like a team mapping coach right now to identify everyone on the teams, what they call genius. So I guess you call it superpower, same thing, genius, and really only trying to focus on what I'm best at, and then taking somebody else and bringing them in, and then they're best at something that's not what I'm best at, and bringing them on the team and building our team that way. And we've got such an amazing team. And, you know, I've always kind of worked that way. And so when I talk with other companies and other founders and they are like, man, you've got a great team, I'm like, I don't want to ever take that for granted because we really have built something truly amazing. And I'm really thankful for everyone that's on the team because that's what makes Toups and Co go around, and it makes me able to be home with my kids. And like
Mhm.
when I'm at Toups and Co, and I'm bringing a baby, she's either strapped to me on the front or on the back. And it's just kind of normal for us to just be working right there along with our kids. So yeah.
And how abysmal would you say traditional skincare and makeup products are? And what were some of the non-negotiables when it came to ingredients and formulation that you really wanted to abide by when you were launching Toups and Co?
So for me, because I already dealt with thyroid, which is autoimmune, so hormonal issues, I really, instead of looking at what's so bad with conventional skincare, because there's so much and it's a lot to unpack, I looked at what ingredients were nourishing and amazing and took those. And that was where we started because I was like, that's all I want to touch my skin. Because with conventional skincare, we're putting this on our skin 365 days a year, multiple times a day sometimes. And when we talk about health and it being so multifaceted, yes, we have toxins all around us and we're not going to be able to avoid them. And trying to avoid every toxin is even more stressful on your body than, sometimes the toxin itself. But in skincare, because we can control it and we're physically applying it to our body every day, our hormones are just being bombarded with all of these phthalates, which are like hormone mimickers and estrogen mimickers and all of these preservatives and just straight toxic ingredients that companies look at these ingredients. They're the cheapest, the easiest to get, the most synthetic. So they're definitely going to be the same every time. There's no variation like tallow. And they're putting these products together for profit,
Mm.
margins, and they're not thinking about the person putting them on their body. So when we go to the store, that common misconception of, well, if it's on the shelf, then, it must be safe enough. And it's just not true, unfortunately. And so I really like people to teach themselves to read ingredients and like be your own advocate and be responsible for what we're putting on our body. It's not the company who's making a toxic product. It's not their fault that we're buying this off the shelf and putting on aluminum deodorant right on our breasts. Um, we need to take or have the mindset of taking responsibility for our own health, educating ourselves on what those ingredients are, reading the ingredients on the back and not like the word natural on the front.
Mm.
And being aware of what we put on our bodies or bring into our homes because we're the gatekeeper for our children of what comes in our home, they're going to use whatever you have. And so, I think it is the parent's responsibility to gatekeep what comes in the house. And I take that very seriously. If I'm purchasing it and it's coming in our home, I have looked it up, vetted it, read studies on it, seen what the ingredients were before I brought it in. We can't control when we're at someone else's home or in other places, but I can control what I purchase and what my kids use. So, ditching the toxic skincare is just and makeup, which is just laden with toxins in the US because there's hardly any regulation, which isn't to say I wish there were more regulation. I don't. I wish we could educate and inform people that they can make better choices. And so having products in the marketplace that are an easy choice, when someone can look on the back, they can read everything and say, this is a great choice. That's how I'm going to make waves in people's health, not by regulating it, not by advocating to the government to save us or to change these rules, because all they're going to do is make it harder for people like myself and other, small time founders to play with the big guys. And so there's some new regulations that are coming out in skincare and everybody's like so excited and championing it. And on the back end, like receiving the information of what we need to provide to prove that we're not using these products, it is so inhibitive to people who might have started in their home. Like in the next 5 years, someone might have a great idea and want to start in their kitchen and they can't because they've been regulated out of it. If those regulations were in place 10 years ago, I would have never been able to start Toups because it would have been, cost prohibitive and very just, overwhelming to someone who's starting in their kitchen like I did. So I guess I answered more than just your question, but
No, it was perfect. It was perfect. I was going to ask you a follow-up for you and for the consumer out there that's kind of they're into nutrition, they're changing their diet around, and then they're kind of becoming aware to this like non-toxic lifestyle. And it's not just the food I'm eating, but our skin is literally treating these products like it's food itself. Are there any ingredients that you think consumers should be on the lookout for? And if they're checking their deodorant or makeup and it has those ingredients, like just immediately chuck it in the bin and get rid of it?
yeah, so like all polysorbates, 20, 80, there's probably new ones that come out every year. It changes. Absolutely not. Phthalates, which are any plastics, plasticizers, they change the texture of products. Definitely throw out. Fragrance is like the biggest one, and it's like the easiest one to read and understand. In the US, there's like 1,400 ingredients that can go under the name fragrance because it's protected by trade secrets. And so when people see a decent ingredient list, they're buying it on a big box store shelf, and there's plenty of products like this that have a decent ingredient list, and then they have the word fragrance on there. And these fragrances they're almost more toxic than like the preservatives and other things that people are using, which are also estrogen mimickers and change the hormones in the body, because our receptors are seeing this preservative and they're thinking that it's like a hormone. So it's treating it that way, except that it's not. Our hormones don't flow in the symphony that they should because it's synthetic. And so that's when we're seeing like major hormone disruption. So fragrance is always going to be the biggest one for me, that and aluminum, which is in all deodorants, because it's actually antiperspirant is the aluminum. And when you see a natural deodorant, it's never going to be an antiperspirant. We want to perspire, we want to sweat, because that's how our detox pathways are getting rid of toxins, and that's how our body maintains its health. And that kind of common knowledge, or I'm saying common knowledge, isn't actually that common. And it's easy for us in the health and wellness space to kind of get in this bubble and think that everyone knows this information. And I'm saying it over and over and I'm beating a dead horse. But then I go out and I speak with people and I will say simple things like that. And they're like, I had no idea. And so there's so much more education that can be done around ingredients, and not naming all these long words and methylparabens and things like that, but literally simply you need to be able to read the ingredients and know what they are, and you need to avoid preservatives and fragrance.
And like, can you talk about the formulation process as someone in like going back in time as you were really getting going? So many people struggle with just the experimentation of, hey, I'm gonna, put these ingredients together and try to formulate this product. And there's something awesome that comes from people just being willing to tinker. So I'm curious, like, as you've evolved the business, how has that formulation process actually evolved as well?
So I'm still like head formulator, and I will come up with a new product that I already want for myself, and or that customers are asking us for. And then, start making formulas. Everyone at Toups will be using it and trying it. All of my sisters and mom, I've got plenty of candidates to try all the products. And that's kind of how we've done every product is I'll formulate it till I like it, let everyone use it, do stability tests to just, make sure that it is shelf stable. And then we, my sister is a chemical engineer. I wanted to throw that in there. She, when she was at her, I guess in her senior year at LSU, she was able to use some of or all of whatever the lab was in there to work on her senior thesis. And so me and her worked together, and like the baby wash was one that was like beyond my expertise as far as like percentages go and allowable pH and all of these things. So I definitely have some help. I don't have all of the knowledge to do it, and definitely employ help when I need it. But the basis of formulating is just finding out what do we need? Is there a gap in the market for it? And how can I make it better? Where can I get the most nourishing, regenerative ingredients that I can possibly find? My husband's in charge of all tallow that comes to Toups. And so he's the one calling the farms, vetting their process. Are they working with Savory Institute? What are their practices? How are they raising their cows? And is it going to be good enough for us? And what we found, which is really amazing, is some of these farmers were like, we'll do what you need. We've never heard of the Savory Institute. Can you direct me to them? What do you classify as regenerative? And that's been just a really cool facet of it too, is just the questions that they ask and they come back. And I'll say, well, this farm is doing this and that is to our standards. And if you do that, we'll buy your tallow. And they want to be better. They just need the education. So education is like a pivotal part of Toups, educating the people we work with, our vendors, where we get our raw materials, but also our customers, educating them on why this is important and why their health is worth it. It's easy to buy good products for our kids, but it's always difficult to spend it on ourselves. And I resonate with that as a mom. Is like I will put them first, and I'll just take the leftovers. And I think a lot of moms do that, but I want to be the best version of myself for my kids. And so really investing in ourselves, where there's mental, emotional, our products, the food that we eat, all of that together is part of the education that I want to give to the world from Toups. And so, yes, we sell skincare and makeup, but I like to use it as a platform for education as well, because I believe that is so important.
That makes a lot of sense, because I mean your company is really this embodiment of this amazing health transformation that both you and your husband Trent have had too. And it's so much more than individual skincare. It's like you're really helping to pioneer a movement. Yes, it's in the form of skincare, but it seems like you're so passionate about teaching people about all these different practices and facets of health that have really helped you and your family transform your health. I'm just curious, what product are you the most proud of?
Uh,
It's like
I'm gonna,
asking you, it's like asking you what's your favorite
yeah,
kid. I'm sure
they're
it's
all my
probably a tough.
babies, but
Yeah.
so I love the tallow, obviously. It's like our pioneer product and it's so amazing and I believe in it. But we have a product, it's called Glow Serum, and the oils and the herbal and botanical constituents in it are just like mind-blowing. So my husband had a spot on his head, and it was definitely odd, and it was from overexposure in the sun, and it has helichrysum and rose and some of these like healing botanicals. And healing is a no-no word in the skincare and makeup industry. You cannot say that. but I can talk about the herbs themselves as being healing. I said, put that on it. And so he started using it, and this pre-skin cancer, this odd area that he had on his head, like completely disappeared. And so I had a friend of mine reach out, and she's like, oh, my husband Justin has the same thing. I'm gonna have him use my glow serum on his face. And he started using it. She's like, I'm amazed. It just disappeared. And so the glow serum I use for like sunburn, it just is so amazing. And so I'm proud of it because it works well. But honestly, it's not the product. I didn't create this product. The Lord gave us these herbs. They do what they're supposed to if they're in their natural and potent form. And so we're able to just to take them and combine them into something that's easy to purchase and use. And so I hate taking credit for when the natural products are doing what they were created to do. But I think most importantly that they're in their original unadulterated form, and that's why they work so well.
That's incredible. Emilie, we're gonna talk to Sarah and get a code set up for our audience so they can support you after hearing your story and just hearing all the great things you're doing with Toups. But where's the best place for people to find you, learn more about your products, and learn more about what you're doing?
So come to our website, it's toupsandco.com, but also follow us on Instagram at Toups Co Organics, because that's where you're going to see a lot of the education pieces.
Love it. That's perfect. It's so cool getting to have this conversation. It's one of the things that we love about this podcast is getting to connect with founders of brands that we're passionate about and have been fans from of afar. And when you hear these stories, it just makes you realize that I think everyone has these inner gifts and talents that maybe God has shown them, or maybe he's still kind of like revealing, and you'll figure it out over time. But it's just amazing what you can build in a fairly short period of time when you find what your God-given mission is and leaning into it. And I think a lot about that big food. There's like that graphic of the big food web of like the 10 companies that control most of the products in the grocery store. And it gets us both very motivated and hopeful for the future when we connect with founders like you and what you're doing at Toups & Co. Because what you're doing is a very visible pushback where you're making products that you wish your children had access to, and you're also doing them at affordable prices. And that's why we need to just have as many conversations like this as possible to really spread this message. And, the word is getting out. It seems like every day people are making the switch from, aluminum deodorants to the natural ways of living, switching from fake meat to real beef from a regenerative rancher. And I think that if we just keep pushing this message and being open and honest and authentic, like we really can win this battle and the world will be in a better place. But, we're both just genuinely super inspired by everything that you built, and it's motivating to us. And we just appreciate you being willing to have this conversation with us.
Thank y'all so much. I really enjoyed it, and I was honored to be on here.